Spike Cohen joining us, a libertarian extraordinaire. He's been on when he was running for office in that was 2020, I think, as VP for Joe Jorgensen. And I think the last time, Spike, you were on with me, y'all were rabble-rousing here in Alabama to try to make it possible for another party to be on the ballot other than Democrats and Republicans. Wasn't that right?
Yeah, that's typically what we're doing. It's if you're not running as a Republican or Democrat, they get automatic ballot access. The rest of us have to spend millions of dollars and tens of thousands of man hours to get on the ballot. So that's probably more than likely what I was doing.
Yeah, so I don't know. Have we made some inroads around the country or and here in Alabama? Is it changing anywhere?
Well, it's getting tougher in many states, and what's happening is as a larger and larger share of the American public says we don't want to have to just choose between the same two bad options every time. Those two bad options have basically acted like a cartel to keep out the other sides. Now, with that said, I'm pretty confident we are yet again going to be able to get 50-state ballot access, but it's going to be that much more expensive and take that much more time. And every bit of man hours and money that we have to spend just to get on the ballot, that's time and money that we can't put into actually campaigning to give voters a viable option to the Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, when people talk about what the Uniparty is doing, they have all these other things, but how about just the X's and O's? The Uniparty, likes the fact that they only have to compete against one other party instead of other. Yep. Yeah, so I mean, they're definitely in cahoots on that one.
Oh yeah. No, the Republicans and Democrats seem to agree on two key issues. One is that every day is a great new day to screw over the American people just a little bit more than the day before. And the other thing is that they will do everything they can to make sure that that the voters have no other real viable option to choose from.
So that is laid out. Y'all will probably be visiting that again in the future when we just remind you about ballot access. Even if you are, because I'm this weird person, even if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, the idea of keeping other voices out should be distasteful to you, but that's just me. All right, I got a note from David Preston here, and he said, "Hey, until he told me I didn't know this was going on. This is cool. You're going to be debating David Hogg, who is, I guess, self-declared, gun control. I think what they say, gun control activist. How about anti-gun activists? And then I heard this, and I set this up for you to come talk, and then I see the story." I guess, posted over the weekend where Vice President Kamala Harris went to Parkland, Florida over the weekend to make a push for red flag laws. What do you make of that? And talk about this debate. I mean, that seems to be timed, right? David Hogg, Parkland, all this.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, actually, we've been working on this debate for several months, so it just seems to be somewhat serendipitous that this happened. But the thing, what's going on is what always goes on. On either the heels of a tragedy or on the anniversary of a tragedy, that's when the government strikes, because that's when the people are at their most desperate or at their most angry, and that's when it's easiest to sell them yet another terrible idea. This terrible idea is red flag laws, where your neighbor can have you swatted for saying something on social media that they didn't like. And so she went down to Parkland, to Stoneman Douglas High School on the anniversary of the shooting there, and called for federal red flag laws. At the exact same time, the Department of Justice just so happened to announce that they were introducing a federal red flag program that is going to basically funnel money to states to cajole them into implementing red flag laws if they haven't already, or to provide additional funding for red flag laws. And if you follow anything having to do with the feds giving money to the states, they're basically going to weaponize the state rules that the states have and get them to use it as often as they possibly can. So if you thought red flag was bad up until this point, wait till you see federally funded red flag.
Spike, is it going to be whip or carrot? You know what I'm saying? Is it going to be like highway funds where states better do this or you won't get highway funds? Or is it going to be that we'll give you money for doing this and you can set up new departments with federal money?
Yeah, so the carrot is going to be for the states. The whip is going to be for the rest of us. And it's actually not going to be a whip. It's going to be a no-knock raid at 3 in the morning because you said something, or wore a hat that someone didn't like, or you posted something on social media that someone didn't like, and all they have to do is anonymously call the police and say that I believe this person is a threat and that they have firearms. And with little to no due process, you will have police at your door. Hopefully knocking on your door, but in some states they don't even bother doing that. They just throw flashbangs into your windows and smash your door down and take you by surprise. hopefully don't kill you or any of your loved ones in the process. And it's happened multiple times already. Now the feds are going to be throwing billions at this. It's going to be a disaster. And you can thank every Republican and Democrat who voted for the so-called bipartisan gun violence reduction bill back in 2022 for this.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second and say, but should we not be looking, whether it be Uvalde or others, should we not be looking for these red flags of people? Should law enforcement not be tracking people that might end up doing something violent?
Well, I think that if someone is an active threat, there are already tools that every state has in place to protect the public. What red flag does is goes well beyond that. If anyone says that they have a feeling that you might pose a threat, without any real investigation or any real due process, they, as Donald Trump put it back in 2018, take the guns first and then due process later. And the problem is, take the guns first means SWAT teams coming to your home and, again, hopefully knocking and probably not knocking. That is a far greater risk than what it pretends that it's going to be taken care of. A far better way to deal with it are the tools that are already in place. If someone is an active threat, you call the police, they do an investigation, and if they need to intervene, they will. That's how due process and how our rules are supposed to work. It's supposed to be the police look for a potential threat and then investigate it, not the police assume you're a threat, come to your house, and treat you like one with a SWAT team.
Coming up, so this debate coming up on the 10th, we'll talk about how people can check that out. So you're debating David Hogg on just Second Amendment, on red flags. What is there any layout for what the debate will be focusing on?
This is going to be a wide-ranging debate going from everything from the purpose of the Second Amendment, whether or not we should have a Second Amendment. Spoiler alert, I'm going to say yes. Also on specific, what, if anything, has worked to reduce violence and murder. We're both going into this with the good faith assumption that the other one is against murder and thinks murder is bad and wants there to be less murder, and then go from there. So there is going to be a public safety part of it where we're going to talk about like what has worked and what hasn't worked. So it's going to be very broad and very wide ranging. We're going to be talking about what the militia means in the preamble to the Second Amendment. We're going to be talking about red flag laws and I'm sure mandatory gun buybacks and everything. I plan to thoroughly debunk every single point, part and parcel of the gun control argument, which is easy to do if you have the facts.
What I like about this and what you said, Spike, and the reason, I guess, pun intended, behind this is let's look at things that work. There's feel-good things and there's things that work, right?
Yeah.
And we should get rid of the feel-good stuff and then maybe debate the things that work, whether they're a violation of our constitutional rights, right? Like you pare back the number of things we're actually going to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And what we've seen that works the most in the U.S. is to protect people with guns. And that's really what it is. Some people may not jive with their sensibilities, but the reality is we protect politicians with people with guns. We protect money with people with guns. We protect our valuables with people with guns, and we protect our children and people in concerts and people in stadiums with signs that say "No guns, please." And what happens is that's why something like 95% of mass shootings have all happened in so-called gun-free zones, because if you're looking to score a big body count, you're going to go where you're probably going to be the only person with guns there. And that's exactly what ends up happening. And so one of the things that works best is for private properties to be allowed to have not just armed guards, but to allow members of the public who are there to be armed to protect the vulnerable people there from potential mass shooters. That is what works. It is an amazing deterrent, and it stops the shootings if and when they do happen.
Yeah, and the question then should be state by state, because you're talking about them going to the states. Their liberty. This is a tough one for me. Their liberty within a state to vote in local. I mean, is it a straight violation of the Second Amendment? Is it nipping at the edges of it? What liberty should individual states or municipalities or counties have?
The moment that any municipality or state is infringing on your natural God-given rights, they are violating it. And so it's we typically feel that governing local is the best way, that you usually get the best governance as local as possible. But the reality is, if that local government is the one that's the most infringing on your rights, then they don't have any special right to do that. We don't have a right to infringe on each other's rights, and so we can't bestow that right onto someone else by proxy. So, anything that is a violation of your natural God-given right to protect yourself and to keep and bear arms is a de facto infringement on the Second Amendment. That's what was determined in the Bruin decision, that anything that does not comport with the Second Amendment, which is that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, is an infringement in and of itself. Now, private properties can certainly choose to say that guns are not allowed on their property. That is their right, because they own that property and they can do that. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing states and municipalities forcing private businesses to not allow gun ownership on their property, and that's especially ones that have large groups of people. This attracts shooters. You don't hear about mass shootings at gun shows or shooting events or places where there's lots of guns. And if we were using the gun grabbers argument, it would be that those would be where all the mass shootings happen, because that's where the most guns are. No, it's where there's only one gun, the person that wants to kill people.
Now, people want to check out this debate. It's going to be online.
Yes, it's going to be in person at Dartmouth University on April 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern. But for the people who don't live in or around New Hampshire, it will be available online. If you go to spikecohen.com/gun debate, all of the information is there. We will have a link to the live stream once it's available, and you'll be able to watch it there. It'll be, again, April 10th. Starting at 7 p.m. Eastern.
All right. Well, good stuff. We'll be tuned in or checking it out online, and then maybe react the next day. You feel good going into this. You feel like are you the Tyson in this fight? Is that what you think?
Oh, well, I don't know, because Tyson is 57. So someone compared it to Tyson versus Paul, but if it was in 1988. So I don't want to be too cocky, but I will just say that the facts are on our side and the truth is on our side. Gun control does not work. And gun control actually leaves people more vulnerable. And gun rights and acknowledging people and respecting people's individual right to keep and bear arms is not just the most moral and ethical way to deal with it. It works best. We are safer that way.
We'll be watching, and I appreciate you chiming in on the show today and telling us about this coming up on April 10th. Thanks, Spike.
Hey, thank you, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, there goes Spike Cohen. And